I'm in the mood to debate.
Okay.
I wish you would.
I said okay. I'm here. Let's go.
I'm a political scientist, so let's get into it.
I'd love to.
When did the party switch?
Oh, that's easy. It was a transitional process that started roughly in 1933 and culminated in 1968.
The United States of America worked as entities similar to the European Union before 1861.
No, not really.
They had their own cash, they had their own values, and that's why they have their own constitutions, similar to the European Union having the same American dollar. But you didn't understand that.
Hey, I guess anything can be true if you lie. Can you explain to me how states had their own currency until 1861 when Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, ratified in 1788, said that states weren't allowed to issue their own currency, and a federal mint that also prohibited states from issuing their own currency was set up by the Coinage Act of 1792? And I'm not great with numbers, but I'm pretty sure that both of those were passed before 1861. Just by a little bit. Now, state-chartered banks could issue their own notes that were supposed to be redeemable for the equivalent value of gold or silver, but that was banknotes, not state-issued currency, because state-issued currency would be, illegal. And private commercial banks continued issuing private banknotes until 1935, which, let me check my notes, is after 1861. Now, for all of your big talk, it seems like you got a little confused with the free banking period. And that's where the private state-chartered banks could issue their own currency, and they got kind of taxed out of existence around 1863-ish. But the states themselves never issued their own currency, and private federal banks still issued their own banknotes until 1935. So no, it was never like the European Union where individual countries or states had their own currency, their own cash. Also, the European Union has the euro, which, they all use, which is like a central currency, like the US dollar that we have, that all the states use. Also, states still have their own constitutions, like they always have, and those constitutions have always been subject to the United States Constitution. So what was that thing you said again?
But you didn't understand that.
Yeah, that was it.
And I know you ain't talking about Teddy, because you have got to be kidding me right now. You could have been looked up that was a third party and there was no fucking switch. It was called the Progressive Party, bitch.
That was aggressive. Wrong. First off, no one is suggesting that Teddy Roosevelt had anything to do with the party switch. That again started in the mid-1930s, 25-ish years after he left office. And Teddy left office in 1909, but in 1912 he decided to run for the Republican nomination again because he really hated Taft. And then when it became obvious that Taft was still going to win the nomination, Teddy, still trying to piss in Taft's Cheerios, jumped ship and ran third party under the Progressive Bull Moose Party. That was a man switching parties, not the party switch. Bitch. So while Teddy has absolutely no relevance to the party switch conversation, I'm glad he brought him up, because who doesn't like talking about old Ted? He is a fun guy. Anyway, got anything else?
How many of your founding fathers were actually Republican? Not many.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's accurate. The exact number, if memory serves me, and let me count again, is 0, because the Republican Party didn't exist until 1854. Again, not sure what the fuck the founding fathers have to do with the party switch, but do go on.
How many of your founding fathers that were Democrats actually agreed with all of the things that you currently are saying are Republican policies?
I haven't double-checked, but I'm going to assume around 0-ish again, because the Democratic Party wasn't founded until 1928, and most of the founding fathers were older, fucking dead by then.
How many Democrats still have the nuclear family and the values that they currently keep today?
Huh? The nuclear family is a Republican issue today. And the term wasn't even fucking coined until 1920. It didn't even become a political issue until the 1950s, 1960s, during the civil rights and specifically women's rights movements. So again, not seeing the relevance here.
The Democrats enslaved them. The Democrats ruled this country.
They decidedly did not. It wasn't even Americans who enslaved you. It was colonial Europeans. Slavery'd been going on for a long time before white people even knew this continent existed, let alone formed a country and the Democratic Party. And they ruled this country? They did not. In fact, their inability to rule this country is exactly why they started the goddamn Civil War in the first place. They didn't have enough political power to maintain the institution of slavery legally, so they resorted to treason and terrorism. If they ruled this country, they wouldn't have had to start a goddamn war to try to hang on to their ability to own people. It's common fucking sense. Have you ever read a book, like any book? Dr. Seuss even. I would take Dr. Seuss.
Democrats were the ones that fought against the Republicans. The Republic.
You do realize that, like, the Republicans and the Republic are two different things. Kind of like, how Jaguar is a car and a Jaguar is also a cat, and the car is not a cat.
Taxation without representation. Do we really not know that?
No, we don't. What the fuck does taxation without representation have to do with anything in this fucking conversation? That was just the rallying cry for the revolution. It has no real legal relevance to anything. It's not like it's in the Constitution, and it was used for a cause that happened decades before either party formed. You said you were a political scientist? Are you like a homeopathic political scientist? Because everything you've said sounds a lot like, bullshit. Anyway, I'll give you a quick, historically factual rundown of the political party system in the United States and the party switch that very much did actually happen. For science. We'll call it a psychological experiment, about leading a horse to water. Shit, hold on. Forgot my halter and lead rope. All right, now we can go. And the United States has had a bunch of political parties over the years. One of the earliest and biggest political parties was the Democrat-Republican Party. One party, hyphenated. Kind of like those married couples that can never fit their entire last name on a paper application because they decided to put their both annoyingly long last names together. And then in 1824, the party got into a little bit of a marital spat. Some of them wanted John Quincy Adams for president, the others wanted Andrew Jackson for president, so the party split, and the Democrats coalesced around Andrew Jackson, which is why they formed a little bit sooner in 1928, and the more progressive Republican side split off into smaller factions because they couldn't get their shit together and agree on stuff because, you know, some things on the left never change. So then you got like the Whigs and the National Republicans and whatever. Then in 1958, the Republican Party was formed and became this umbrella party that all these smaller parties like the Whigs and the Abolitionists and the Free Soilers all merged into and became a dominant party. Lincoln won the election, Kansas entered the Union as a free state, giving free states more political power than slave states, all but ensuring the eventual end of slavery. The Civil War happened because the slave states, which yes, were controlled by the Democrats, knew this and decided that they wanted to do their own thing so they could keep slaves. Obviously, they lost, and then Lincoln got, you know, and Andrew Johnson, his vice president, who assumed the office, was a gigantic racist piece of shit and Confederate sympathizer. He oversaw Reconstruction, basically let the South do whatever they want, rewriting their own history and like pretending like they didn't really lose and Jim Crow the fuck out of everything and put up a bunch of stupid statues commemorating traitors. And that really split the priorities of the Democratic Party. You had Democrats, or Northern Democrats, who the social issues of like segregation and all that really weren't as front and center for them and allowed them to kind of ignore it and focus on other policy. And then Southern Democrats, who were putting literally all of their energy into racism. Now Republicans, who've always sucked at the economy, they've literally never been good at it. They were always economically conservative, but at the time they were socially liberal. They had really run the economy into the ground and caused that whole depression thing. You know, it was pretty great. FDR gets elected in 1933. He's got all these New Deal policies. The New Deal policies are geared towards helping disadvantaged people. It turns out that black people have been traditionally, you know, slightly disadvantaged in our country. A lot of those policies, while still heavily favoring, you know, the white disadvantaged people, also did some good things for the black disadvantaged people. Southern Democrats did not like that very much at all. They didn't like it at all. And they threw a bunch of hissy fits. They continued to throw these hissy fits all through the 1930s and 40s, but they really had no power to affect any change. The Republicans at this point still didn't want them because they were still a socially progressive party at the time. The rural South didn't have enough voting power to split off and make a relevant third party. Though they did try, they called it the Dixiecrats, led by Strom Thurmond in 1948. They tried all kinds of shit, but nothing worked. But as the 20th century wore on, Democrats got better on the social issues. And now Republicans, who always sucked at the economy and were now losing their edge on social issues, were just hemorrhaging political capital, and they were fading into irrelevance. Now JFK, a New York Democrat, gets elected with a pretty socially progressive platform. To balance that ticket and court the southern states, a Texas Democrat, Lyndon Johnson, was added as VP. And you know, JFK gets Lyndon Johnson becomes president and signs the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This was the ultimate betrayal by a Southern Democrat. Strom Thurmond then switches parties, switched to the Republican Party in 1964. More party leaders follow, and LBJ rubs more salt in their wounds by signing the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Now, basically, since the Democratic Party's inception until 1968, every single Southern state had voted blue in every single election. In 1968, LBJ's home state of Texas is the only Southern state that votes Democrat. And then in 1972, every single Southern state, including Texas, voted for Richard Nixon. That's the party switch, honey. You don't go from voting for one party your entire history and then switch to the opposite party in one election and call it anything other than a switch. And the Republican Party, looking for new political power, decided to embrace the hate and racism of the Southern Democrats to absorb the power that they brought to the table. Look up Nixon's Southern strategy. It's the whole thing. It's not even a secret. Like they wrote it down that this is what they were doing. There, you've successfully been led. Now the question is, has your thirst been quenched?
Let me know if you need a part 2.
Well, stock tank's still full, so I'm guessing that's a no. And also, no, we don't want a part 2, because there never should have been a part 1. Please, no more parts. We don't want to see any more of your parts. On a serious note, I got tagged in a bunch of your shit, which is unfortunately the only reason I even know you exist. Every single video of yours I've seen is just utter nonsense. It made it difficult to pick which one I was going to react to. I picked this one because you kept tripling down on it, and I like this topic, but we could have gone into any of them, like your complete lack of understanding about how disaster funding works, or political policy, or just basic civics, because you just have a ton of videos that are just geriatric millennial level bullshit. What I cannot tell is if it's genuine ignorance wrapped in a blanket of unearned arrogance and confidence, or if it's willful ignorance wrapped in that same blanket, or even worse, it's not ignorance and you know better and it is just vile attention seeking. Elder millennial shit where you know better, but you just say outrageously wrong shit on purpose to get people to react to you. Because you desperately need and want people's attention, and you don't care what type of attention it is, and you are willing to be as disingenuous as possible to get it. And you found that if you say absolutely asinine shit fast enough and with enough confidence, there's people who aren't going to fact check you and will just stroke your little ego. And there's people who aren't ignorant enough to just follow along with your rambling and do correct you, and that gives you your fodder for your next disinformation and misinformation video. That is incredibly harmful for all all of us, but it's sad because it's the most harmful for the community that you belong to. But hey, at the end of the day, I guess Candace Owens and Clarence Thomas sleep in a nicer house and a bigger bed than I do, so what the fuck do I know? And hey, if you continue on this path, I hope you get to their level, because you're gonna need that money to buy a nice bed. Otherwise, I don't think you'll be able to sleep at night. But again, that's coming from a guy with a conscience, so what do I know?